What if you walked in on your daughter's murder, but didn't realize it until it was too late? What if the killer escaped and remained unknown for over a decade, until a new DNA technology revealed his face and name? What if the suspect was already dead by the time he was identified? This is the tragic and shocking story of Jodine Serrin, a 39-year-old woman who was brutally raped and killed in her own bed on Valentine's Day 2007. Her parents discovered her body, but not before they saw the perpetrator lying next to her, pretending to be her boyfriend. The case went cold for years, until a breakthrough in 2018, when a forensic company used DNA phenotyping and genetic genealogy to create a portrait and a family tree of the killer. His name was David Mabrito, a transient who died by suicide in 2011. In this video, we will explore the details and the twists of this horrifying case, and how the new DNA technology helps solve it. We will also discuss the implications and the limitations of this technology, and how it can be used for other cold cases in the future. Hello everyone, and welcome to True Crime Diary, the channel where we dive into some of the most fascinating and disturbing cases in history. If you are new here, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you are already a subscriber, thank you for your support and your feedback. Today, we are going to talk about the murder of Jodine Serrin, a case that has haunted and baffled many people for over a decade. Jodine was a sweet and loving woman who had a mental disability that made her function at the level of a 12-year-old. She lived alone in a condo bought by her parents in Carlsbad, California, where she enjoyed painting, gardening, and spending time with her friends. She was also looking for love and had a few boyfriends in the past. But on Valentine's Day 2007, her life was cut short in a horrific way. Her parents, who visited her regularly, came to her condo and found her in bed with a man they assumed was her boyfriend. They left the room and returned later, only to find out that Jodine had been raped and murdered and the man had fled. The police launched a massive manhunt for the killer, but failed to find any matches in the criminal databases. The case went cold for years, until a new forensic technology called DNA phenotyping, which creates a composite of a person's appearance based on their DNA, gave them a new lead. They also used genetic genealogy, which traces a person's ancestry based on their DNA, to narrow down the suspect pool. They finally identified David Mabrito, a transient who died by suicide in 2011, as the prime suspect. His relatives confirmed his identity and his DNA matched the crime scene evidence. This is the story of how science solved the cold case and how justice was finally served for Jodine and her family. Stay tuned to find out more. Jodine Serrin was born on June 12, 1967, in San Diego, California. She was the youngest of three children of Art and Lois Serrin, who were both teachers. Jodine was a bright and happy child who loved to learn and explore. She had a passion for art, music, and nature. She also had a close bond with her family and her friends. But Jodine's life was not easy. She was diagnosed with a mental disability when she was a toddler, which affected her cognitive and social development. She functioned at the level of a 12-year-old and needed constant care and supervision. She attended special education classes and programs and received various therapies and medications. She also faced bullying and discrimination from some people who did not understand her condition. Despite her challenges, Jodine did not let her disability define her. She had a strong sense of self and a positive outlook on life. She was kind, generous, and compassionate. She had a good sense of humor and a playful spirit. She enjoyed painting, gardening, and spending time with her friends. She was also looking for love and had a few boyfriends in the past. In 2005, Jodine's parents bought her a condo in Carlsbad, California, where she could live on her own, but still close to them. They visited her regularly and helped her with her daily needs and chores. They also hired a caregiver who checked on her every day and assisted her with her medication and appointments. Jodine was happy and proud to have her own place where she could express herself and have some privacy. But Jodine's parents also worried about her safety and well-being. They knew that she was vulnerable and naive, and that she could be easily manipulated or taken advantage of by others. They tried to protect her from harm and to teach her how to be careful and cautious. They also installed a security system in her condo, and gave her a cell phone to keep in touch with them. But nothing could prepare them for the horror that awaited them on Valentine's Day 2007. On February 14, 2007, Jodine's parents decided to visit her and surprise her with some gifts and treats. They arrived at her condo around 8 p.m. and knocked on the door. There was no answer. They tried to call her cell phone, but there was no response. They became concerned and decided to use their spare key to enter the condo. They walked in and noticed that the lights were dim and the TV was on. They called out Jodine's name, but there was no reply. They walked towards her bedroom and opened the door. They saw Jodine lying in bed, covered with a blanket. Next to her, there was a man, also covered with a blanket. They'd assumed that he was Jodine's boyfriend and that they were sleeping. They felt embarrassed and awkward and quickly closed the door. They thought that they had interrupted Jodine's romantic night and that they should leave them alone. They decided to wait outside the condo and come back later. They hoped that Jodine would call them and explain the situation. They waited for about an hour, but Jodine did not call them. They became worried again and decided to check on her one more time. They went back to the condo and opened the bedroom door again. They saw Jodine and the man still lying in bed in the same position. They thought that they were still sleeping and tried to wake them up. They pulled back the blanket and screamed in horror. Jodine was dead. She had been raped and strangled. Her face was bruised and swollen. Her eyes were open and staring. There was blood on the pillow and the sheets. The man was also dead. He had a knife in his chest and a pool of blood around him. They realized that they had walked in on a murder scene and that the man was not Jodine's boyfriend, but her killer. They had seen him alive, but did not recognize him. They had left him alone with Jodine's body and he had killed himself. They had missed the chance to stop him and to save Jodine. They were shocked and devastated. They called 911 and reported the crime. The police arrived and secured the scene. They interviewed Jodine's parents and collected the evidence. They found DNA, fingerprints, and a condom wrapper in the bedroom. They also found a backpack, a jacket, and a hat in the living room, which belonged to the killer. They did not find any signs of forced entry or struggle, which suggested that Jodine had let the killer in or that he had followed her inside. They did not know who the killer was or why he had targeted Jodine. They did not know how he had met her or what he had done to her before killing her. They did not know if he had planned to kill her or if he had acted on impulse. They did not know if he had killed himself out of remorse or out of fear. They did not know if he had any accomplices or if he had any other victims. They had a lot of questions, but no answers. The police launched a massive manhunt for the killer, but they faced many challenges and frustrations. They ran the killer's DNA and fingerprints through the criminal databases, but they did not find any matches. They did not have any leads or witnesses, except for Jodine's parents, who could not identify the killer. They did not have any motive or profile for the killer, except that he was a white male in his 30s or 40s, with brown hair and a medium build. They released the killer's sketch, based on the description from Jodine's parents, and asked the public for help. They also released the photos of the killer's belongings and asked anyone who recognized them to come forward. They hoped that someone would recognize the killer or that he would have left some clues or traces in his backpack, jacket, or hat. But no one came forward. No one recognized the killer or his belongings. No one had seen him with Jodine or near her condo. No one had any information or tips that could help the police. The killer remained unknown and anonymous. The case went cold for years, and the police ran out of options. They could not find any new evidence or leads that could crack the case. They could not give any answers or closure to Jodine's family, who were suffering and grieving. They could not bring any justice or peace to Jodine, who deserved better. Jodine's family did not give up hope, though. They kept fighting for Jodine and for her memory. They offered a reward of $50,000 for any information that could lead to the killer's identification and conviction. They created a website, www.justiceforjodine.com, where they shared Jodine's story and appealed for help. They also worked with the media and appeared on several TV shows, such as America's Most Wanted, 48 Hours, and Dateline, to raise awareness and attention for the case. They hoped that someone would come forward and that the killer would be caught. They hoped that the new DNA technology which was developing and advancing, would help solve the case. They hoped that one day they would know who killed Jodine and why. They hoped for a breakthrough. In 2018, their hope became a reality. The police announced that they have finally identified the killer thanks to a new forensic technology called DNA phenotyping, which creates a composite of a person's appearance based on their DNA. The technology was developed by a company called Parabon Nanolabs, which had helped solve several cold cases in the past. The police sent the killer's DNA sample to Parabon and asked them to create a portrait of the killer. Parabon used their software, called Snapshot, to analyze the killer's DNA and to predict his physical traits, such as his eye color, hair color, skin color, face shape, and ancestry. They then used these traits to generate a realistic image of the killer's face, which they sent back to the police. The police were amazed by the result. The portrait was very accurate and detailed, and it matched the sketch made by the witness. It also matched the photos of the killer's body, which the police had kept confidential. The portrait showed that the killer was a white male with brown eyes, brown hair, fair skin, and a European ancestry. It also showed some distinctive features, such as his nose shape, his ear shape, and his facial hair. The police released the portrait to the public and asked for help again. They hoped that someone would recognize the killer and provide his name and background. They also hoped that the killer would have some relatives who could confirm his identity and provide his DNA. But the police did not stop there. They also used another new forensic technology called genetic genealogy, which traces a person's ancestry based on their DNA. The technology was also developed by Parabon, and it used a database called GEMatch, which contained the DNA profiles of millions of people who had voluntarily uploaded their data from various testing companies. The police uploaded the killer's DNA to GEMatch and searched for his relatives. They found several distant cousins who shared a small amount of DNA with him. They then used the information from these cousins, such as their names, locations, and family trees, to construct a possible genealogy for the killer. They narrowed down the suspect pool to a few branches of the family and then to a few individuals. They finally identified David Mabrito, a transient who died by suicide in 2011, as the prime suspect. They contacted his relatives, who agreed to cooperate and provide their DNA. They also obtained Mabrito's DNA from his autopsy and compared it with the crime scene DNA. They confirmed that Mabrito was the killer and that he had acted alone. They also learned more about Mabrito's life and why he might have targeted Jodine. They discovered that Mabrito had a history of mental illness, drug abuse, and criminal behavior. He had been arrested several times for theft, assault, and trespassing. He had also been homeless for most of his life and had lived in various places, including Carlsbad. He had no stable job, no close friends, and no family ties. He had been depressed and suicidal and had left a note before killing himself. They speculated that Mabrito had met Jodine by chance and had followed her to her condo. They guessed that he had raped and killed her and then had panicked when he saw her parents. They assumed that he had pretended to be her boyfriend and had waited for them to leave. They surmised that he had stabbed himself and had died shortly after. They concluded that Mabrito had no connection to Jodine and that he had chosen her randomly and brutally. They realized that he had no motive, no remorse, and no conscience. They realized that he was a monster who had destroyed a life and a family. They announced the results of their investigation and closed the case. They thanked Parabon and GEMatch for their assistance and praised their technology. They also expressed their sympathy and gratitude to Jodine's family and apologized for the delay. They said that they hoped that the identification of the killer would bring them some closure and peace, and that they would never forget Jodine. This is the tragic and shocking story of Jodine Serrin, a 39-year-old woman who was brutally raped and killed in her own bed on Valentine's Day, 2007. Her parents discovered her body, but not before they saw the perpetrator lying next to her, pretending to be her boyfriend. The case went cold for years, until a breakthrough in 2018, when a forensic company used DNA phenotyping and genetic genealogy to create a portrait and a family tree of the killer. His name was David Mabrito, a transient who died by suicide in 2011. This is also the story of how science solved a cold case and how justice was finally served for Jodine and her family. The new DNA technology helped the police identify the killer and confirm his identity and his DNA. The technology also helped the family find some closure and peace and honor Jodine's memory. But this is not the end of the story. The new DNA technology also raises some questions and challenges, such as the ethical, legal, and social implications of using it. How reliable and accurate is the technology? How secure and private is the DNA data? How consent and informed are the people who submit their DNA? How regulated and accountable are the companies and the agencies that use the technology? These are some of the questions that we need to think about and discuss as the new DNA technology becomes more widely used and available. We need to balance the benefits and the risks, the rights and the responsibilities, the hopes and the fears of this technology. We hope that you enjoyed this video and learned something new and interesting. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this case and on the new DNA technology. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. With that said, thanks for watching.